Hey everybody, welcome back to Actually Useful, the podcast where we talk about what's wrong with the internet and we chat with the good people who are trying to fix it. This episode, those good people are us, because we are doing a wrap-up episode to close out our very first year of Actually Useful. We're going to talk about what we've learned, but first we have a tremendously concerning amount of news to report on. This is our pared down list of the news. So all three of us are here and going to report on this. So AJ, what do you have for us?
Well, kicking off right here with our big guys, ChatGPT, they are probably going to do what we all feared and roll out ads soon. A reverse engineer posted on X that he found strings inside of ChatGPT's code that seem credibly attached to an ads API. A quote from Reddit says, "So 5 years ago, you had a nonprofit that hoped to make the successor species to Earth intelligence, and instead, you're getting Sam Altman's ad-sponsored approval simulator."
I feel like this is the thing we cannot forget about OpenAI, is that they are continuing to sell this vision that this product is going to somehow like improve humanity, save climate change, cure cancer. And of course, what is it actually? It's an ad. It's just a bunch of ads.
Dude, I'm starting to feel more and more vindicated about my take that AI 2027 was a marketing ploy to convince us all.
I feel like you're not wrong in that, like, we talked about this in our AI episode, but like doomers and boomers are two sides of the same coin. Like both doomers and boomers in an AI context believe that AI is like more powerful than humanity can possibly control. It's just that boomers are like excited to have robot overlords and doomers are like, but that seems like a bad idea. And so it's like you have to be kind of outside of the AI bubble to have the opinion that I think the three of us probably have, which is like, this is a bubble. This is not really a thing. So I don't know. I feel like whether it was intentional marketing or just like an AI booster who's writing it in a scary way to be
Sure.
like, I genuinely believe that this is going to replace humanity really soon. It still is like a little bit delulu when you think about it. So
speaking of enshittification, Samsung, which makes these smart fridges that start at like $2,200, I think they go up to around $3,500. They have tablets built into the fridge that has like news, calendar events, the weather forecast, your shopping list, all that kind of stuff. They quietly pushed out this update that just puts ads into that feed. And so they did this retroactively, even if you had already purchased, a $3,500 smart fridge, all of a sudden you're seeing ads in your own home. And then when people pushed back against it, they very quickly were like, oh, okay, we'll change this. You can turn it off. But the only way to turn it off is to turn off the entire screen. So you don't get, your notes, your calendar events, that kind of stuff. So this is just another classic bait and switch where you think you're getting one thing and then through updates, they're just forcing you to consume more ads.
yeah, and this is like right after Amazon rolled out full screen ads to its Echo Show. It used to put them a little bit more subtly. And like I'm at my parents' house right now, and my parents don't pay for ad-free versions of anything, which is like a personal form of torture for me. But they watch a lot of Prime because all they watch is British murder mysteries, which are only on Prime. And it's like every single ad is now like an auto-generated, like they're not like commercials. It used to be like pharmaceutical commercials. Now they're all just like a static sort of like window with like a little video that plays. It's just like music, like royalty-free music over it, and then there's like a QR code and like a little like add to cart button. So like it's literally, it just looks like a digital ad on the TV in the middle. It interrupts our shows to just like run these digital ads. It's very weird. And also Samsung wants to roll out, like Samsung is rolling out screens on all of their appliances. So your washer and dryer are going to have, and this tablet on these fridges it's 2.5 feet tall. Why do you need to make the whole fridge be, it's basically like having a billboard in your kitchen. Like that's what these ads are. And so now they want to do it on every single product.
I mean, I don't know, dude. After like 2 decades of data showing that screens cause accidents, like Tesla's big innovation was just the entire car is a screen. So I don't think we're very cautious about how we roll these things out.
Another piece of news, this guy named Brian Penny, who I don't really know anything about, but he describes himself as just a pothead with Google. I think he like has broken cyber stories before, but I don't know if he's like a professional cybersecurity analyst. Anyway, he discovered first on the Nevada Department of Transportation's website that there were pages in the website, so like on the actual domain structure, so that it's like, I don't know, nevadadot.gov/something something, that in the namespace for this domain that is owned by the state government of Nevada, that there are like pages that describe how to use AI nudify/undress apps, like the deepfake porn apps. It like describes how to use them and then has links to them. And so he was like, what the fuck? Like these, he went on this whole thing where he was like, there's absolutely no real use case for a nudify app. Like there's no good use case for that. It's only problematic. It's just like, it's obviously like non-consensual and criminal to the people that you're inserting into this pornography, and it's bad for the sex workers whose content is being used against their will to like train these models. So he just is like really anti-nudify apps for good reasons. So he started digging into it, and there are now 38 government agencies across 18 states that are being targeted by cyber attacks that post backlinks, ads, and tutorials about specifically nudify apps and then also cryptocurrency scams. And so I was trying to explain this to like my dad of like why this happens. There is news coverage of it. Like there's a couple, like Bakersfield just did a video segment, and like a local like news channel out of Nevada did it. But I have not heard anybody from the government talking about this. The city of Los Angeles's website is affected. California is actually the one that's been hit the worst. The California Secretary of State website is getting attacked by this. And so basically, like if you're a bad actor and you're selling a dubiously legal product, which I think that like right now, the nudify apps and cryptocurrency scams, they are definitely in like a gray area of like legality where like they're part of a legal industry, but they themselves have dubious circumstances. Basically, if you're in this gray area, Google already like doesn't really like to index illegal stuff. It has certain signals for whether or not these websites sell real products and whether the products are helpful. So like it's really hard to get your porn websites, even though porn is legal, it's hard to get it like indexed by Google. It's just not what Google is made for. There's different search engines that do that. So it's hard to get traffic to your legally gray products because like how will you do that other than capitalizing on all the people Googling nudify products and cryptocurrency products? And so what you would want to do is tack on to a domain that already has years worth of domain authority cultivated with Google, because Google is more likely to trust brand new, newly created web pages from domains that have a really long and trustworthy footprint. Now, my guess is if these companies, these legally gray companies, if they could have tacked on to Amazon's domain or to ChatGPT's domain or to somebody, eBay's domain, I don't know, somebody who's getting more traffic, they probably would have. But my guess is that those companies have like better cybersecurity than our municipal government websites. So they tacked on to municipal government websites. So they found a backdoor, and they are now creating pages on these websites that advertise deepfake porn, how to use deepfake porn, how to make it, advertise cryptocurrency scams. And like, as far as I can tell, nobody in charge is doing anything about it.
Do we think they're like being allowed to do this by someone in the government for like a kickback? Because this is like the most corrupt administration we've ever seen.
It is, but these are like state governments. Like as far as I know, they're not on, I don't know if they're on federal agencies. Like California state government, I mean, they could be, but you have to wonder, I don't think that cryptocurrency scams or deepfakes, like I don't think their pockets are that deep. I don't think these companies are making, I mean, the kickbacks would come from really established companies. Like I'm not saying that there's not bribery going on in our municipal governments. I just don't, it doesn't really pass the smell test of like why these companies would do it.
I think it's probably just incompetence and inability to come up with a policy around this.
Yeah, I think they just don't have the right cybersecurity in place. We know that like our government has not good software engineering. Like we've known this we've known this since the Obama era, where he tried to bring more tech into the government, and like the ACA website crashed. And I mean, we struggle with just basic serviceability when it comes to online tools for the American government. So I wouldn't be surprised, AJ, if you're right. It's just like incompetence. And
that was before Big Balls was given the keys to the kingdom, access to everyone's medical and information.
Before Big Balls ruined it all.
This is one of the programmers for Doge who's like 20 years old and was able to just like carve up our digital infrastructure.
Yeah. So last piece of news we'll cover. So Kalshi, the prediction market, is now signed with CNN and CNBC. Those just happened this week. So the partnership that Kalshi has with CNN, I'm assuming CNBC is the same idea, but basically they are going to add a ticker so that they'll have like real-time updates of Kalshi's predictions on CNN as if somehow that's news. Kalshi also just raised a $1 billion funding round. So Kalshi and Polymarket, which is another big predictive market, they've both popped up this year. Basically, you can bet on anything. A quote from the co-founder of Kalshi is, "The long-term vision is to financialize everything and create a tradable asset out of any difference in opinion." So we are actually officially in hell now. That was the cutover. That was the threshold for are we living in hell? And we're there now. So welcome, everybody. Already what's happening is that these, like some of the bets on both Kalshi and Polymarket are about war crimes. Kalshi has a number of bets on it related to Palestine and things that could or could not happen in Palestine based on how severe Israel wants to take their war crimes. And then recently, 404 Media just published, I think today, published an article about Polymarket. I don't think I really knew what insider trading was. I am now working for like a publicly traded corporation, and I had to do insider trading training. And the fact that like a substantial portion of our economy is like purportedly held up by just the honor system of people not saying things about their job is just like absolutely fucking crazy. And of course, nobody who actually could push these markets is adhering to it. But I was already thinking before this 404 Media article that the ramifications of what like insider trading-esque actions look like in these predictive markets is crazy, because it's like you can bet on things that you then have absolute control over as a government or a business or a person, a celebrity, whatever. So like this happened already. So basically a live map that tracks like the frontline war in Ukraine was edited to show a fake Russian advance on the city of Mirnohrad. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it was edited to show a fake advance because there was a bet on Polymarket where if Russia captured Mirnohrad by the middle of November, then people would make money. And so Polymarket relied on this map. It was edited, unauthorized. Russia, as far as we know, did not capture this city. And then now, like, the bet resolved, people made their money, and mysteriously the map was edited again, and the advance vanished, and there's no record of it. Thank God 404 Media caught it. But like that is just a really tip of the iceberg for like what could be happening in terms of pushing these markets if they get big enough. Of like, this just becomes, I mean, if you think about like internet culture being people doing crazy things for the bit, this is now like doing crazy things for the money, like for real money. So it's just really bleak.
I mean, it's just fucking insane. The one that really disgusted me was, I don't know if it was Polymarket or Kalshi, but there was money lines on whether Israel's genocide in Gaza would be classified as a genocide.
Yeah.
There was one that, like, the number of people that would starve, like all these just like heinous things. And
yeah.
to have the image of people sitting at their computers like, I'm going to put 10K on like this number of children starving, and then like hoping to hit that line. Like that's not a hypothetical. Like that's actually what's happening in the world. So
yeah, it's basically like a at scale version of at the beginning of the pandemic when a bunch of Republican Congress people invested in companies that make body bags and made a bunch of money off of.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was the thing that happened. So this is just that at scale, essentially.
Going back to the news item here of it being integrated with CNN, as our resident bro, I do feel like I have to tie this to the way that DraftKings and like FanDuel has been intertwined with sports. Yeah. So across like baseball, basketball, football, you've had all sorts of stories breaking this year and last year about athletes betting on outcomes of games. And so that's like, insider trading for sports.
Yeah.
The only difference is they can literally change the outcome. Like you can pitch poorly if you have bet on your team to lose that game, I guess the thing that I just makes me really frustrated is like, what did you think was going to happen if you ingrained sports betting so hard into the ecosystem, into like ESPN, into every podcast that covers sports? Obviously the athletes, if you make sports betting so accessible and this billion-dollar industry, and then you're literally partnering with it on the networks, like, how are athletes not going to get involved? How are coaches not going to get involved? Not to mention the fact that they're clearly targeting like young boys. Like, it feels like cigarette ads to me.
Yeah.
And, I don't think gambling should be illegal. Like, I don't think alcohol should be illegal. I don't think cigarettes should be illegal, but they should be handled with some amount of like, we don't give this to children, like we don't encourage people to, and I know there are protections, whatever, but just the branding around it makes it seem like an exciting way to have some skin in the game. And, that's how you like kind of build the permission structure to eventually be betting on war crimes,
Yeah.
This may be foreshadowing an award that's going to be given out later, but I do just want to hit one shit post real quick, which is which is a tweet that says, "Hey, can I borrow 1 million Mr. Beast bucks so I can bet on my ability to pay the 4th installment of my Klarna Max membership on my congressional mandate OpenAI compute tax? It's a tradable asset streaming live on Net, HBO, Flick, CNN, Binance, Junior Performative Reading."
Oh my God, the Mr. Beast bucks, bro.
Dude, Mr. Beast is launching financial services. That also came out today.
I mean, Netflix just bought Warner Bros. So, like, honestly, this podcast is needed now more than ever, gang.
Just let's just call it a day. Let's just call it, it's humanity's done. We've done enough at this point, I think.
But we can't give up, gang. So, Ariel, what are we doing here today?
Okay, so today we are talking about what we have we learned so far in 6 months and 12 episodes of Actually Useful. We set out with this show to try to figure out, in a world right now, in a current era where things are getting super, super enshittified, it's not really poised to get better, at least in the US. We don't have the right government in place to be able to give us more regulation or more competition or more labor power. So what can individuals do? So we looked back at all of our episodes and all of our conversations with our amazing guests, and we kind of went through and said, like, okay, what did these conversations have in common in terms of how these radically useful products are organized from a business perspective? What kind of feature choices did they make? What kind of cultural practices do we see in our guests? And so we found a couple of threads that we can pull on. So we will just go through some of them now.
Yeah, I think my overall takeaway is just the breadth of the different types of companies and models and ways of doing things that are out there. I think maybe initially I thought this was going to be really focused on like VC-backed tech products, and we talked to all different types of founders and folks innovating. Definitely some classic tech products, but also nonprofits. We talked to a bank. We talked to all these different folks. It was really cool to see how some technology that is typically used for harm, like ads or getting people to watch ads. We saw Sal talking about how he uses those to actually help fund Dogo, his nonprofit. We didn't hear anyone say, my investors gave me so much access I wouldn't get otherwise. We did hear that there is pressure to prioritize projects with more revenue impact to please investors. So there was, I think we accurately predicted that the financial imperatives are often on the line, causing product owners and founders to make these trade-offs. But I think we talked to plenty of folks who were able to circumvent that. Alex Sanfilippo being a huge one, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because like you said, I think when we first started talking about this show, we did think about getting sort of like traditionally, VC funded startups in here. And it's interesting, especially like in our conversation with Alex, we talked about how our show is a different type of product podcast because it's not about how much money did you make and how many users did you get. For so long, like the amount of funding that you've gotten is sort of a signal that your product is really important. And even Raj said it, that like now there's sort of a trend towards like, if you didn't get funding, that now is sort of a benchmark of like, oh, you did things really radically different. And so I do think it's interesting that we didn't hear anybody like brag about their investors, you know?
I think it'd be interesting for our next season to get a few different investors on and really talk about their trade-offs and who they're beholden to and how it might be starting from the top there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why we're announcing Actually Useful VC. So this is going to be...
What else did we learn, guys?
Yeah, jumping off that, Ariel, I think we also learned a lot about metrics that actually matter for people's products, and moving beyond, something like DAU over MAU, daily active users over monthly active users, or net promoter scores, things like that, kind of industry standard, and just kind of zooming out a little bit and being like, what is the service we are offering to our users, and what metrics would measure that usefulness? When we talked with Dorian, yes, they have certain KPIs like how many people are signing up for the app, this and that. But one of the important ones is like the sadness rate, which they talked about was how many people get 0 shares when they sign up for the service. And so looking at things that actually would impact a user's like desire to keep using your product, their overall happiness with the product. With Podmatch, when we talked to Alex, he was like, a lot of these users aren't able to afford the hobby of podcasting. So like, what's a step we can take that will help them with that? He implemented this profit sharing model. We also found that, this one's hard to measure, but like word of mouth, that's still one of the best indicators that a product is actually useful. Like, are you actually telling your friends about it? Even on our last episode, when Ariel was talking about 1sec, like they're not giving us money. That's just an app that Ariel has said improved her life. I actually downloaded it as well after that, and I've been enjoying it. So I think those things are really important.
I think something I would love to introduce is, maybe I don't have the right word, but I'm going to call it a fuzziness metric. Like kind of like the warm fuzzy feeling that you feel about something you love. Like I think a Monzo has high fuzzy, Podmatch high fuzzy, it's like,
it's a type of sentiment analysis, but it's like bigger than that,
It's like a special delight. Product managers talk about delight, right? But it's a delight measure, but it's also kind of like this just feels like your heart's in the right place and the product is in the right place, but it's a really hard thing to measure. But I think if you asked anybody, it's like, do they glow when they talk about it versus are they just like, oh yeah, I have to use this thing.
Yeah. And I think Alex Sanfilippo talked about how like he wants the Podmatch to have a personality. And so I think all these products that do have like the warm and fuzzies, I can certainly think of a number of apps I use. Like I really love Finch. I just feel really like emotionally attached to my Finch app, And I think that does come from establishing a pretty clear personality. And part of that is like never compromising on what people love about it, right? Like not betraying your own users by 5 years down the road starting to take away some of those things that gave people the warm and fuzzies. And yeah, so like with, Podmatch's personality inflected into the product, we heard about UX so much this year. We had a couple episodes dedicated to UX and sort of debating some of the things that actually provide a good user experience for end users is often at odds with what investors want or what sounds good in business wrap-ups or board slides or whatever. So examples are like, yeah, Alex, chose to use for Podmatch, like handwritten copy. He's never used AI to write the copy. I described it as endearingly homemade because it very much feels like it's Alex's baby. It's his passion. He does founder-led product walkthroughs to really make it feel like there's a real community, that Podmatch is led by real people. We also talked about for Podmatch that they chose to feature like actual working podcasters who are frequent guests on shows on the platform rather than just picking like a couple of the people who have like the highest notoriety or the highest profile and putting them on a homepage, whether or not they actually contribute much to the podcasting community. We talked to Michelle Yang about some barriers she ran into at Amazon of like, this is another example of just the bureaucracy of the things that seem like they're good for the business really being at odds with the user. And so Michelle talked about, we all know that if if you want to make something really pop to an end user on a web page, it needs to be in like red, bold letters. And when they were working on final sale policies, it was really hard for Michelle to try to get final sale text in something users could actually see at a glance, because they had all these design standards, and she kept getting blocked by these like unproductive and onerous corporate approval processes that at the end of the day, like, do not add anything to the user experience. And you have to wonder, like, who's getting why is the signal getting lost in this noise? Like, who's benefiting from a really long design review process at Amazon, right? And then we talked about, with both Marcos and JP, we talked about how it can be really problematic when a business is incentivized to do something that creates more friction for the user, whether that's outwardly hostile UX, whether it's incidentally bad UX. So obviously some hostile UX we talked about. We talked about making it hard to cancel a product and trying to send someone through a runaround of upsells before they're able to cancel, even if you described it as like a no hassle cancellation policy. Accept cookies obviously inspired a whole episode where we talked about like this UX, this very obtrusive UX we're all now stuck with for who God knows how long. It's just manufactured consent. It's not actually doing the thing that was supposed to be a user experience ad. Like, that legislation was supposed to improve the user's end experience by collecting less information, by protecting the user's privacy more, by making these apps less predatory. And in exchange, absolutely nothing has changed in terms of privacy regulation. Instead, we all just have this extremely obtrusive modal where we have to do this fake manufactured consent instead of actually getting any improvements on privacy. And with JP, we talked about how, a lot of times I think businesses go with trends. They go with trends because they're really, there's a lot less risk taking these days in trying to develop and launch new tech products. And so some of it can even be really silly. Like, there was a whole era of parallax scrolling where parallax scrolling started with editorials and interactive articles, and then people started using it for like shopping carousels. And it's like, well, no, if I'm trying to get from point A to point B, please don't put me on this maze of parallax scrolling that's going to move my website elements around in ways that I can't predict. And then I obviously made a quip about AI logos looking like cat buttholes, but I think what it speaks to is like, even the logos themselves have so little risk being taken. Pre AI, every single tech logo was some kind of sky blue. It was some kind of blue. It was like blue was the only color tech could be. It was so obnoxious. And now that we're in AI, everything looks like a cat's butthole. It's all some variation of just like a little spiral fractal. I don't know what they think that means for humanity, of like, why is the spiral fractal like the picture of the future? I don't know. But if somebody could just make a different fucking logo, that would be fantastic for me personally,
Well, on the positive side, transparency on authenticity was a huge theme. And there are so many examples of companies this is kind of the core of why they exist and what they're trying to do. So you look at Adogo, for example, every dollar that you spend, you see exactly how that is funding a medical treatment. People want to do good, but they don't trust where their dollars are going to go. And so that was really solving a problem by having transparency being a core of what they're doing. Another one, Groover, for example, music industry, notoriously nebulous. You're always sending emails into the void. Nobody's ever telling you what's what as an artist. They're coming in there and their product is about giving transparency to artists, between artists and curators. And now every submission either gets accepted or constructive feedback. That was another really, really inspiring one there. Marcos, we talked about ways that companies don't do this. They trick you. You're getting caught in a constant stream of upsells. Trying to cancel a no-hassle subscription. We've all gone through all the hoops that you have to jump through to do a very basic task. And the takeaway we all had was, we understand that as a business, you need to make money. And if you're going to sell me something, at least be transparent about it. Another theme here, we talked about, Ariel brought up this concept of your product is what it does. So news sites and sites that we think are designed to inform users are really just there to sell ads. And so the metrics that they're measuring and what their business model is around getting people to click on ads and not measuring how informed people are or how engaged with the news that they are. And then last on this subject area around authenticity and transparency, if we talk about what's actually happening in the product development process, that spiritual violence around the folks who are building those products not being transparent and authentic about what it is that they're building. So sugarcoating a feature. Let's take the Samsung fridge, for example. It's highly probable that as that team was designing that feature, they were not talking about, hey, let's sell more ads to people. They were talking about, let's do personalized recommendations. Let's tailor the user experience of the fridge to this person. That violence that comes around a team using the bullshit corpo rationale that they're somehow doing something good for the user when everybody knows, hey, actually, we just exist here to sell more subscriptions, or we just exist here to sell ad revenue.
And it's like, it, but it's easy to forget. I remember that being one of the first things Josh and I talked about before we'd even committed to this podcast was that, Josh has not been a PM. And I was telling him that it's very common at work that we say something internally is going to be good for a user. We constantly push this agenda of that's going to be good for the user when everybody actually knows that we didn't make that feature because it's good for the user. And it probably isn't good for the user. And it's definitely really good for the business. And that it really is damaging to your spirit to just exist constantly in that state.
And if you're that junior PM that brings it up on the call, everyone's looking at you like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. You're
we're just trying to get out of this. We're just trying to get out of this meeting. We're just trying to get a paycheck. Calm the fuck down. We're not saving the world. We just need to get through this. And then, anybody that's over 25, sorry, Josh, sorry to call you out, it's kind of has that real world perspective of, oh, we tried. We were young. We tried to change the system. But at this point, it's not really going to benefit anybody by bringing this up right now because there's nothing that we as PMs can do. It's got to come from the top. And hey, we've tried and they don't care. So why should we care?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to change the system here. So that was another theme of if you do want to have integrity, then how do you get discovered? Because if you don't want to play the game of doing clickbaity stuff, making false promises, doing really flashy overselling when you're a startup, how do you actually, get people's attention? Something that came up a couple times was doing things that don't scale. So Alex from Podmatch was talking about how he is very personable, very available. He wanted to talk to users as they were leaving early on in the company and say let's have a 5-minute chat, what's going on. Those are things you can do when you have a user base of a certain size, but you can't do if you have, 1 billion users on your platform. But to build your brand trust and to start acquiring users, doing things that are personable and take time and aren't just easily automated, I think makes a big difference. And that quote actually comes from Brian Chesky, who's the CEO of Airbnb. And before they got super and shitified, he believed in, quote, doing things that don't scale, like sending professional photographers to each of the listings to have it professionally done, have a very consistent aesthetic on the app, and really helping build trust with users. Now, discovery is getting even harder with starting searches in AI, in LLMs, or just the fact that the Google front page is now even more cluttered than ever. They've tweaked their algorithm to make it less useful to get more AI. So that's an example of twiddling, making the internet harder. So maybe this is something that we could talk about down the line, maybe a Falcon mode that helps make discovery easier. And also another word of mouth plug, we swear no one's giving us money, but Coggy is a great service that you pay on the front end. We're saying, it's transparent. They're saying, this is the transaction. You give us a certain amount of money per month. We give you a disinshitified search engine.
My favorite thing about Coggy is still that they have their, I forget, fair pricing guarantee, which is if you don't hit their endpoint in the span of a billing month, they just give you back your money, which I'm just this is the standard for what we should be doing. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we did talk a lot about regulation and labor power. Obviously, a lot of times we talked about it as something that is lacking, but a key takeaway from Cory Doctorow's most recent book, Enshittification, is that if companies can enshitify, they're going to enshitify. And as I started to as I was thinking about all the different conversations we've had this year, I started to really, really see parallels in regulation and labor power as initiatives that we do to try to improve our overall user experience, consumer experience. I see why these things are so similar, which is that it's the same thing. If if a company can take advantage of its users by inshittifying, or if it can take advantage of its employees by making labor awful, by, you know, we talked about Amazon making their drivers pee in bottles, and there's absolutely no reason that they wouldn't start having their coders do that as well. They don't like value engineers more than they value their delivery drivers. They don't value any of their employees, right? And that's just like, I think, a standard we have to expect out of all of these companies. One thing I kept thinking about too, just because we've had these amazing guests on and they're all like operating in different, you know, they're operating sort of outside of these systems, either because their company is small or they're not in the US or they're a worker and not in an executive. But I do think I kept thinking about how all of like my social feed was only Zoran Mamdani for like all pre-New York election. I was almost excited. Like I was excited for him to win because I really like his policies and I like him as a person, but I was also excited for him to win so that my feed would just like loosen up the grip a little bit on constant Mamdani updates. But I did appreciate that like the line that we all held was like, well, now that he's elected, now we can't be in love with him anymore because we have to hold him to a higher standard and hold our government representatives accountable. And I kind of feel that way about all of our guests as well, which is like, I don't think it's unhealthy to assume that all companies of any size are inclined to inshitify. If you think about a business as its own organism that isn't about the people in charge, then it has its desires, right? Which is to get more money, to get more users. It's to consume. That's the way businesses work. And so I think it's kind of healthy to approach all companies from, hey, if you don't keep them in check, the company is going to become so hungry that it's going to inshitify its product. It's going to take advantage of its workers. And so really what it becomes is like, we want people who like are our guests or people that we respect in these leadership roles to try to have some forward thinking around what are policies that can be put in place now that can prevent that company from ever getting to the point. Like, how can you stop your own inevitable enshittification now? So we still hold our guests accountable. We'll let you know if they fuck up, you know. We also talked about unionization quite a bit. Obviously, that's the antidote to a lack of labor power is unionization. It came up a lot in our episode with Alex Mannix, our second episode. Check out Tech Workers Coalition. That is the best organizing place that we have right now for folks in the tech industry. They have local chapters as well as a big conference. And like we said from Corey's book, you know, more Americans than ever before want to unionize. And we heard from Alex that unionization really it can cover anything that its labor force wants to cover. So it can cover remote work policies, it can cover AI usage policies, it can cover DEI policies, it can cover whatever the workforce thinks that it needs to. And I did, you know, just going back to like today's news of the Samsung fridge, which I feel like it's such a like unsurprising news story, but it does feel like it's such a good encapsulation of all these themes that we're talking about that have come up this year, because I think what another call for regulation and an example of how these companies will take every advantage they possibly can is like so many news stories we covered in our episodes this year are about a company rolling out something outrageous, like super exploitative, and then immediately getting backlash from customers. And it clearly being a situation where they like definitely thought their customers were fools and wouldn't catch the exploitative policy. And then when customers weren't fools and they did catch the policy, the company was like, oh my God, wait, no, you guys, we're so sorry. You actually totally misunderstood us and we didn't mean it like that at all. It's not your fault, but like you misunderstood it. We weren't bad. So like examples were Samsung changing their policies around these crazy retroactive ads in your kitchen, Adobe changing its terms and conditions. It, you know, rolled out T&Cs to Photoshop saying anything you make in Photoshop can be used to train AI. Unity Games did their crazy rent-seeking grab to try to get a commission on sales of all video games made with their software. And then when that didn't go over well and people started leaving Unity Games, they were like, oh no, wait, no, we're so sorry. We didn't actually mean it that way. And so, yeah, I just think it's another example of like, these companies are going to take every inch that they can. And so we have to think about how do we shore up our overall ecosystem to be able to prevent companies from doing that.
And we don't want to come across as just blanketly anti-tech. Like a lot of this this new innovation around AI, around LLMs, like is really exciting stuff that has a lot of cool applications. I mean, in my own life, like Adobe made an AI background noise remover tool, which I use all the time to clean up audio. It's great if there's like a really loud fan in the background or sirens or whatever. It's like pretty much the best tool I've found. What we don't want to see is then that company, Adobe, which is making this really useful thing, then use really shady business practices and shitification to trap you in these insane billing cycles that there's no way to get out of. It's really hard to download all of your files from the cloud. Literally every time I try to save a file, it pitches me on why I should be saving it to the Adobe server instead of to my own computer. Other examples of this are ChatGPT. Some really exciting applications for maybe automating certain tasks, but then CEOs are just looking at this as a way to lay off tens of thousands of people. It has maybe some applications eventually for helping people with mental health, but currently is just being used as a stand-in for therapists, leading to AI psychosis, being used when people are in crisis, things like that. Even Palantir. I mean, the idea of a high level of just having really smart data scientists who are able to synthesize vast quantities of data to help you make decisions like how much white wine should we stock on this Delta flight? Well, that's the same technology that's being used to help ICE as it implements this Gestapo-esque campaign of kidnapping immigrants. So we want the beneficial sides of this technology to be able to help humanity with enough guardrails that prevents it from just being used to screw us all over.
We talked about Tehiku Media, the company that has data sovereignty that is protecting the Maori language for future generations, right? So it's like very concretely that relies on a synthetic text extruder, and that is like the perfect technology to be able to do this almost like sacred task. I mean, this is a very extreme use case of something that's really special, but like, thank God that these things happen when they did. We have so many endangered languages. A language dies every 2 weeks. And now we suddenly have this synthetic text extruder that can like collate this information, can be able to take sounds and make words out of them and allow new generations of children to speak their native languages. But it's the exact same technology that is like actually being marketed and used for doing insane stuff. Yeah, the like AI psychosis stuff, the suicidal intent stuff, the incredibly horny shit that people are doing with these fucking clankers. Like, it's just not, we're not using it correctly. And again, you can't like create these tools and expect that companies are going to be ethical about how they use them.
So AJ, how can we tell that a product is actually useful? What are some good heuristics?
What we came to is one, founders really drawing a line in the sand, drawing a line that they can't cross. A good example would be Dorian refusing to implement a pay-to-play model where you can just pay a high subscription and have a guaranteed number of playlisters or something like that. A bad example of this would be WhatsApp saying, hey, we're never going to do ads, right? And then all of a sudden, fast forward, putting ads in. I think another heuristic, oftentimes what products that were useful was just a founder solving a problem for themselves, which this is a common theme. Unlike a tech bro being like, I'm just going to build a music AI product and having no idea anything about music, it would be, a musician making music discovery tech. Alex Sanfilippo is a podcaster making podcast tech. Michelle, a clothing founder moving into making tech for buying clothes. Something else, I think, was just around the process of creating the app and making sure that you're actually listening to the problem, like the core problem, rather than just latching onto what's faster, easier, going to be a revenue source. So Alex, for example, if podcasters can't afford to keep podcasting, we need to have something that's core to our business that is a profit sharing model and gonna keep the podcast industry afloat. And then this last one, I think Ariel, you kept bringing this up, is like, if the larger industry is upset about whatever's happening, that's probably an indication that you're on the right track.
Yes, make your industry mad. Dorian very early on was talking about how, as he made Groover, these like old school publicists who were bragging to them about making so much money off of artists if they flop or if they succeed, suddenly started getting pissed and like hate Groover now. And they're like, you can't do this for this amount of money. Like, you need to charge them so much more for these results. And so that's another good heuristic.
Because then they look bad for being the greedy ones.
Exactly.
Okay, AJ, so I'm hearing we want founders to draw lines they won't cross, build what they know, do things that don't scale, listen to the community, and make the industry mad.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, so that's what we learned in the last 6 months of Actually Useful. We are now in where we would normally do our Falcon mode segment. But instead, we're going to do a little Falcon mode in review segment. So if you recall, if you listened to our first episode, the reason we call this segment Falcon mode is that the CEO of Lyft, who might be our only 1-star review, we're not sure, the CEO of Lyft put out a stakeholder memo about resisting enshittification. His solution was to go Falcon mode, which was just his weird CEO way of saying thinking, basically. And so we were like, well, we can have funny little words too. So our Falcon modes are our listener segments. And we did notice, I mean, AJ, you really pointed this out in our last episode, but our Falcon modes have had so much in common. And I think when you look at them all in retrospect, the major themes we saw in our Falcon modes were helping people get away from enshittified platforms and services. We had stuff around like, how do I get better Google search results? Whether that means doing a search inside of a search or getting out AI results. There was a couple different questions around getting off of Amazon or trying to be more conscious in your consumer patterns. We also talked about like removing decision fatigue. So there's a couple things around car. So like, how do I get my car fixed? How do I know when to drive somewhere based on whether there's going to be parking? There was like, when do I leave for the airport? Could I have an app that shows me the TSA line? Is this coffee shop ideal for working conditions? So there was a lot around decision fatigue, which I think makes sense. And then the third thing, and I think this is really central, we've talked about this so much, but like there was a lot of themes around building community in real life and trying to use tech as just a jumping off point to get to the things that we actually want to spend our time doing, like being in person together and being outside together. And so we talked about, an app for building healthy tech habits. We talked about a book swap community. We talked about how to get more mutual aid connections and try to get ourselves off of these different consumer platforms and really just use what we have inside of our community. And so I think it makes sense that all of our Falcon modes really came down to getting more agency in your real life and trying to use tech in a way that makes our lives better and not worse.
So this is the part of the episode where I put my producer hat on and force you guys to do a game show. So I think at the end of this year, we should give out some Falkies.
Let's do it. Let's give out some Falkies.
Ariel, who's our op of the year?
All right, our op of the year, the company we hated on the absolute most in all of our episodes was Spotify. It was Spotify. Spotify wasn't good at the beginning of the year. It got progressively worse throughout the rest of the year. They are diluting good music taste. They are really punishing to all artists. They pay absolute trash for streams. They're playing ICE recruitment ads. Go ahead and report that shit if you hear it in your feed. As a matter of fact, why don't we all just get off of Spotify? Brian Merchant just put out a really, really helpful complete guide to getting off of Spotify. We will link it to you. One of the weird findings in that is that the platform that pays artists the most per stream is Peloton. For some reason, Peloton is the one that's best to artists. But yeah, fuck Spotify. We're done with you. And don't worry, our podcast will still be up there for the time being. It's like why we're also on TikTok. But I, for one, am going to get off of Spotify. So that's our op of the year.
Moving on to our award segment for our guests.
Yeah, first up, our beautiful, amazing first guest. Because of her awareness that doing great product work sometimes means putting your own needs first, our Peace Protector Award goes to Alex Mannix.
I fought to give Alex the Most Bisexual Award because of her podcast, She Comes By, but I was outranked.
You were outranked, not because I have an issue with giving her Most Bisexual, but she didn't talk about being bisexual in our episode on our podcast. But she is also honorary mention, I suppose, Most Bisexual. Or tied for most bisexual, I guess. I don't know.
You're right. This podcast that we do is just 3 straight people just talking about Being straight.
As you can
That's
tell
us.
from our podcast, really aggressive straight vibes coming out.
Indeed. Next up, he's funny, he's friendly, and he's fed up with predatory industry norms. Our most French award goes to Dorian Perron.
Whoa. You cannot be friendly in French. That's an oxymoron.
I know, but what if he could be the beacon of friendliness for the French people? I did think it was very funny that he's so French and also so friendly.
I think being distrustful of industry norms, French Revolution vibes,
That does feel
distrust of the
legitimately
government,
French. All right. In honor of his many service initiatives and his overall attitude of kindness, our biggest heart award goes to Sal Muhammad.
Duh.
Literally the kindest, sweetest. He's in my feeds every day, and that always makes me smile to see his little face.
Shout out. All right, next up, in honor of his ability to do something that everyone has to do, but he makes it cool and fun, Chillest Banker Award goes to Marcos Montes.
Woo!
Next, because he's philosophical and full of good ideas, our Best Thought Partner award goes to Raj Singh.
Yes, it does. Best thought partner, for sure. Because he's passionate about being good to his users and he's really super nice to us, our Most Wholesome award goes to Alex Sanfilippo.
She's gone from Amazon to her own personal Stardew Valley. Our Greenest Thumb Award goes to Michelle Gang.
He's artsy, he's got great taste, and he renders accurately on screens of any size. Our Least Serifed award goes to JP Candelier.
Yes, it does.
All right, next up, we got Ones for Each Other. I love this one. So, for reading more books in a year than existed in the Library of Alexandria, we give the Concerningly Literate Award to Ariel.
Thank you. Thank you. I do read many books.
You have a problem. It's over 400 a year, folks. That's more than a book a day. For surfing couches across the globe, we give the International Woman of Mystery Award to AJ.
She's everywhere we'd rather be. And for blowing up our group chat constantly with mostly relevant posts he finds on the internet, our Shit Poster of the Year award goes to producer Josh.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to re-download X because of you, unfortunately.
That cannot be my legacy.
That is your legacy.
When he sends me something on X, I'm just like, I wasn't meant to know the rest of the story. I just look at what's available in the preview.
That's the way they get you. Is the only reason I have Twitter is because I'm a diehard Clippers fan and I want to commiserate with my fellow masochists. But then it's unavoidable that you just see all the insane news of the day on your feed.
So to wrap up today's episode, we'll remind you that about halfway through our season, AJ had the amazing idea of torturing our guests by forcing them to do their very best Falcon impression, completely unprepared, and not a single person ever knew what a Falcon actually sounded like, including ourselves, who are also in these rankings.
So without further ado, please enjoy our top 8 Falcon calls of 2025. Kicking us off at number 8, our very own Ariel. Accurate with a strong send.
At 7, we have Josh.
A macaw!
Okay, I'm pretty sure that's a chicken, but all right.
At number 6, we have Raj.
I don't know.
Tonally accurate.
Coming in at number 5, JP. Chill call from a chill guy.
Number 4, we have Michelle. Small but mighty.
Cracking into our top 3, we got Alex. Honestly, one of the most accurate.
Our penultimate Falcon call, Marcos.
I have no idea.
He honestly put his entire soul into that.
He really did. And finally, our number 1 favorite Falcon call, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the most energy, and also our very first, is Sal. I think AJ actually cried laughing when he did that.
She did. I had to cut it. To close out our Falcon calls of 2025, we're going to need one from AJ. Woo! Ending on a heater.
All right. All right. Well, everybody, we've had an amazing year of Actually Useful. Thank you so much for being with us. We will be coming back next year, but it is the holidays, so we're going to take a 1-episode break to get some rest and some time with our families. Hopefully the news is not too crazy when we get back. So our next episode will come out on January 15th. We do want to hear from you. Send us your thoughts, your product ideas, your gripes with tech, your holiday greetings, whatever you want on social platforms. We are at Actually Useful Pod, or you can email us at heyactuallyuseful@gmail.com. usefulness@gmail.com. I hope everybody has a wonderful end to their year and a great new year. And we will see you all in whatever 2026 brings us.
Baka!
Actually Useful is part of the Industry Plant Podcast Network. It's co-hosted by Ariel Butters and AJ Weaver. It's executive produced and edited by Josh Stratton Carlson. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to our Substack or YouTube at Actually Useful Pod, or give us a follow on most social media platforms.